Stugotz here. When it comes to home and auto insurance, State Farm is the real deal. For starters, they fit seamlessly into your life. Easily manage your coverage, pay your bill, and even file a claim with the State Farm mobile app, which was awarded Best Insurance Mobile App 2019, and they really get to know you. Thanks to the network of 19,000 agents, you'll have someone local to talk you through options that fit your personal needs. When you want the real deal, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. The Dan Le Batard with Stugotz Show podcast is presented by Capital One. This is Banking Reimagined.
This is the Dan Le Batard Show with the Stugotz podcast.
Happy Greg Cote Tuesday. He is in rare diva form, even by his standards. We finally, Stugotz, after all these years, have something news breaking that is in the Cote wheelhouse, and he gave all his fresh and original thoughts to Will Cain yesterday on the radio regarding the death of Don Shula. But this is why he's in rare form, Stugotz, because he texted his son this morning. I will forewarn you, if I get cut off on a hard network out in the middle of a serious discussion about Shula, I'm going to leave the Zoom meeting without a word. Now, that is a blanket threat, but in speaking to just the general entitlement we have around here, and I've had this conversation with Cote so much about the entitlement around here, and he's like, you're right, everyone is entitled. Not me, though, not me. No. The response from me was, hey, there's a clock, Cote. You could just check it. You don't ever have to get cut off. You could simply check the clock because it's the same at the end of every hour. But then he doubles down. Quote, this might be overly dramatic, but bear in mind in the Zoom room era, my appearances on the show have become much less fun for me. I get to contribute a lot less, and sometimes it seems like I'm only on there for a back in my day and to miss a couple of hard network outs. That's not fun for me. Now, there are two things that are funny here. One, he often doesn't have his back in my day. Two, it's very important during a pandemic that the show be just as fun to Greg Cote because he brings so much to it on the days when he's feeling maximum entitled. Now he's pissed off. Right now he's go ahead, Greg, the floor is yours. You haven't been getting enough run on Tuesdays around here, so the floor is yours. Say whatever you want for as long as you want about Don Shula. Your son is cringing because he feels like he betrayed you by telling me all of your secrets.
He did.
Well, he did betray me. Me, who's in charge of my last will and testament, which as of right now is leaving him a big wad of money, but that's under review. I send Christopher private emails, private texts, and they end up on the air. I think that's illegal. I think he is breaking the law in some form. He's certainly breaking the parental law by betraying my confidence. You know, Christopher, what do you have to say for yourself? Because I'm upset that I can't send you a private text. It's like ridiculous.
I'm assuming you're sending me that message to get the message to the team. So why wouldn't you want that heard?
I'm just venting to you. I'm not sending. I'm not intending you to pass that along to anybody.
Well, Greg,
let alone over the air.
Greg, if you're forewarning him, he's got no power around here. Like, why are you forewarning him? You should forewarn me. Why are you forewarning him that if you get cut off during a serious Shula discussion, you're going to walk off without a word? You realize that you disappear for segments at a time. Whose house is that? Whose house is that?
That is my house with two teenage daughters who are currently fighting because one of them is struggling to get online for her class, so they're fighting.
Stugotz, can you get control of your home? Any control whatsoever?
Can you stop saying that, please? Because you don't have two teenage daughters sitting in your house, and I don't have the money to go buy my neighbor's house, okay? So please, just with that one thing, please.
Two teenage daughters and a dog are in your house. It's a big house. I don't think it's a big house built by this radio show. I don't think it's that big an ask to ask your family and your dog to behave themselves while daddy's working. Put it on the poll, Guillermo, at Le Batard Show. Is it too big an ask to ask daddy to take control of his house when the house was built by radio and his dog and his kids won't shut up?
Okay.
That's too big an ask.
No, it's not a big ask at all. I mean, you're suggesting when you say that I'm not texting them, telling them to shut the hell up, which I am. I mean, that's what you're suggesting.
But right before we started, I heard you telling the dog to shut the hell up, and I heard the dog telling you to shut the hell up. It was going to keep doing whatever it wanted to do.
Listen. The dog, I can't control. It doesn't really understand what I'm saying. The kids do, and if you notice, they immediately shut up when I ask them to shut up. So
I am not surprised that there's a lack of discipline in that house. Should I be surprised that there's a lack of discipline in that house? A dog, you do realize that a dog is generally under your control. Like your dog can't eat unless you feed it. Like that, you have all of the power in your hands. Teenagers too, by the way.
Yes, the dog is under my... Well, no, I don't know if the dog is completely under my control. I don't feel like the dog is... I feel like dogs are going to do what dogs are going to do. What I am trying to tell you is I cannot control when two teenage 16-year-old girls decide to go at each other's neck. I never train my dog. My dog does whatever my dog wants to do. This is my dog's domain, so let's leave him out of it. The daughters, though, you're right about. They should know better.
Well, stop giving them money. See if it quiets them down at all. Just stop paying for things and see if they keep talking during work. Speaking of animals that are out of control, I saw this video, Stugotz, that I was amazed by, and I had no idea is something that could actually happen in Indonesia. Okay, I had seen this video a couple days ago because it went viral a couple of days ago, and it's horrifying, Stugotz. But the only part of the video that I had seen, horrifying enough by itself, is a monkey comes and grabs from a group of kids, the smallest one and the weakest one in the bunch, grabs the child in diapers and a yellow shirt and starts dragging the child aggressively, loses its grip, grabs the child by the arm, loses its grip, grabs the child by its hair and drags it by its face as far as it can. That by itself is a shocking enough video. The part that I saw this morning on TMZ that I had not seen is that the monkey rode up on a motorcycle. It's like, what is happening? Like, for as much as I thought the animals would take over, I didn't think they'd form a biker gang.
Leather jackets, Harley Davidson.
Did you think it was possible? I mean, this monkey dragged this kid by the face, and kudos to the Indonesian kid, because it got right back up, not crying at all, and just ran back to where it was in its diaper. But did you think that monkeys did that? Because that monkey was absolutely headed to eat a toddler. Like that monkey was not just messing around. That monkey rode in with a purpose on a motorcycle and literally dragged a toddler looking to eat it.
Did I think monkeys do that? I think when animals are hungry, animals got to do whatever they got to do to find some food, you know? I mean... Don't you? I mean, the birds are flying lower and lower, man. I mean, it's crazy.
You thought that is a reasonable evolution, is a motorcycle riding monkey attacking toddlers. That's something you thought you'd see in 2020.
No. Well, no. I never thought I'd see a monkey riding a motorcycle.
Cote, why did you give your exclusive thoughts on Don Shula to Will Cain before making your appearance on this show, where for the first time in history we would have had a seasoned Miami Herald writer who literally wrote the book on the Miami Dolphins and their perfect season? Instead, you gave all of your exclusive thoughts to Will Cain, so all we're getting is damp leftovers.
Yeah, no, I saved the best stuff for you. But Will, I got a ticket left for me at the Will call window, so I had to respond to who called me first.
All right, let's go to commercials. I asked him for his exclusive thoughts on Don Shula. He wanted to make a Will call window joke so he could go back and texting his son, threatening him with forewarning, and also that he's not being treated right. When we go to him on the microphone in his wheelhouse, he makes a Will call joke. We'll be back with Greg Cody's irrelevant thoughts next.
Geico has the insurance industry-leading app that lets you manage your policy anytime, anywhere. Which means that Geico is always there for you. If only everyone was always there for you. Like animal control, when you're cornered in your garage by an angry possum.
Hi, me again. You guys said you would be here about an hour ago, and I think the possum is starting to get angry. Listen, I thought if I fed it, it would go away, but now it is ripping holes in the drywall and making some sort of nest. Just call me back.
Geico, always there for you with savings and the industry-leading mobile app.
Attention SSI recipients, if you did not file a tax return last year and have children under 17, you must act now to get the $500 economic impact payment per child. If you do not act by May 5th, you must wait until next year to get those payments. Go to irs.gov and enter your information in the non-filer tool by May 5th. That's irs.gov. This message is produced by Social Security at U.S. taxpayer expense.
Even during a pandemic, Billy Gill is trying to fix baseball. You've noticed, Stugotz, that ESPN is airing Korean baseball now, which is just profoundly apocalyptic. And I feel so bad for these announcers. I feel so bad for Boog Shambi and Carl Ravitch. Like, what are you supposed to do? Never mind the difficulties with name and language and information, but what are you supposed to do with not knowing anything about Korean baseball before you start? So, Billy has a recommendation. I just heard Chris saying alarmingly that he has friends betting on this stuff and he was thinking about getting in, but he sat it out for the moment. He sat out betting on Korean baseball in an admirable show of restraint. And Billy has some suggestions as to what it is that we could do with the broadcasts here. What is it that you'd like ESPN to do with the Korean baseball broadcast, Billy?
I don't know how much of Korean baseball you guys have been watching. I have not been watching much, but I watched some highlights today, and one of the highlights was it was a home run. But because there's no fans, nobody knew if the ball was fair or foul because it went right down the right field line. And nobody knew where it landed. And then the announcer was like, well, foul ball, he just missed it. And then he's kind of trotting around. And they're like, oh, no, I guess it was a home run. We were confused. There's no fans letting us know what happened with the ball. The right fielder didn't react. So I was thinking, I think it's time we bring back that hockey puck highlight thing from like the 90s that used to show us where the puck was all the time, but with baseballs in these empty stadiums, so we always know where the ball is. And depending on how hard you hit it, because Dan, I don't know if you've watched baseball, but now they can tell you how fast the ball is coming off the bat and launch angle this and Bill James that, and I don't know. But I figure if they're telling us how fast it's coming off the bat, it could be different colors for how hard it is, or like a light, like, or maybe even sound effects, Dan, huh?
Put it on the poll, Guillermo, at Le Batard Show. Is baseball now launch angle this, Bill James that? Yes or no?
There's a great piece on ESPN.com that informs you, Chris, if you want to get informed on the teams, the players, the power rankings, the history of this league. I will start gambling on this at 5 p.m. Eastern today. I believe that's the second game of the year. Very exciting.
Guillermo, put it on the poll. Do you feel bad for the ESPN announcers now scurrying to learn about Korean baseball? So here's the wheelhouse, Greg Cote. Just about 16 hours later than we would have liked the thoughts, but you could have gotten them on Will Cain's show if you wanted them from Greg Cote. But you are a long-time, old-timey columnist for the Miami Herald. You came up in the time where the newspaper mattered and Don Shula was king. And something that happened on the radio show yesterday that I thought was interesting is that the young people were sort of like, well, he falls out of our demo. Don Shula, icon, legend, legacy maker, he falls out of the demo. That happens sometimes with, the Hank Strams of the world or the coaches from a bygone time. So explain to me, Greg, as someone who grew up in South Florida, as someone who grew up professionally in South Florida, covering Don Shula's Dolphins, and at a time, only Don Shula's Dolphins. Explain to us what he meant to South Florida through your prism as a guy who's been writing columns for the Miami Herald for 30 years and working for the Miami Herald for damn near 40.
Yeah, for me, he was family in a way, and I think to a lot of older fans, he was just that. The timeline was such. When Shula was hired, I was a pimply 15-year-old kid. When Shula retired, I was a married father of two. I mean, so much of my timeline, so much constancy in my life, and not just sports, just so much constancy was Shula on a sideline on a Sunday. And I think I'm not likening it to the loss of a parent, but anybody who's lost an elderly parent, even if they live to be 90, and everybody around you is saying, oh, they led a great long life, it hurts, okay? No matter when it happens, Dolphin fans and a lot of us have had years to prepare for the day that happened yesterday, and still it hits and it hurts. And, I'm still processing it because he meant a lot to my life in a way that I'm not sure I realized until yesterday, just after 10 a.m. when I first got the news.
Was he mean to you much? What do you remember about him intimidating you?
Yeah, he could be very gruff. He was an interesting personality because he could be kind and tender, and he could be very gruff and domineering. He wanted to control every situation he was in. I got to know him very well, particularly in the early to mid-'90s when I covered the Dolphins pretty much on a full-time basis, and that's when I saw Shula every day. And that was sort of late in his career when he was sort of hanging on to his reputation in a way. And those were interesting times. And, he had his moments with me where I would write something that he didn't like. Like you say, those were the heydays of newspapering. And if you were covering the Dolphins for the Miami Herald, you were a big deal to Don Shula, and he intensely read whatever you wrote and cared about it. But yeah, he was he could be very gruff and domineering, but then you'd see him at the end of a practice and his grandkids would come by and he would lift them by the arms and refer to it as hang time, and you would see that great V-shaped grin of his. And he was an interesting personality, and he just he sort of was in my life.
Oh, boy.
Here we go.
He's choked up.
Here we go. I don't think that's choked up. I just think that's general lack of health. We will get back to his yammering thoughts on Don Shula and a V-shaped grin of some sort. I don't think human beings have those, but that's Greg Cote trying to wax poetic during his grief about Don Shula. What he didn't say there is that Shula once got mad at him because Greg Cote was referring to him in print as the cobbler. Don Shula pulled him aside and said, "Why are you calling me the cobbler in print?" And he's like, "Because your nickname is Shoes. Cobblers make shoes." And Don Shula just walked off without a word, thinking that Greg Cote is the oddest bird to have ever covered him across many decades in South Florida, the cobbler.
Regardless, he did a better job eulogizing Don Shula than his son did yesterday.
That barely, I might add.
ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. The Last Dance continues this Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. Immediately after the show airs, listen to the wrap-up podcast hosted by Jalen and Jacoby. The After Show, presented by State Farm and AT&T. The guys will be joined by director Jason Ayer to talk about this week's show and behind-the-scenes stories of the making of the episode. Subscribe now to Jalen and Jacoby, The After Show, on Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to podcasts. Here's your SportsCenter update. The NFL will release its 2020 regular season schedule on Thursday. I cannot wait. The University of Louisville received a notice of allegations from the NCAA involving the recruitment of Brian Bowen II. One of the allegations, of course, is against current Iona head coach Rick Pitino. And finally, the Utah Highway Patrol yesterday had pulled over a 5-year-old who drove onto the interstate with the intention of driving to California and buying a Lamborghini. The satisfying crunch of Nature Valley Crunchy Bars can keep your family going. And with whole grain oats and real delicious honey, it's really tasty too. Nature Valley Oats and Honey Crunchy Bars. For all the latest headlines and information, tune in to SportsCenter on ESPN Radio all throughout the day.
Stugotz, why were you shouting that the grief eater has struck again? Why is this something that you have been shouting at everybody during the first half hour of this radio program?
Well, I think everyone on the show kind of agrees, Dan, that, well, you do. You eat grief. You love grief. You bathe in grief and other people's grief. And so we were thinking that, you know, you're kind of the cherry picker of columnists for the Miami Herald. I mean, you only thunder in for the big stories. Greg Cote, you know, you have had amazing success on radio and TV, and Greg Cote is still, churning away at the Herald, sitting behind a typewriter trying to crank out articles. And yesterday, he was handed a gift. I mean, he was handed Don Shula, who lived a very full life, and he was handed a gift of the Shula column, and you thundered in, and you took that gift, and you took it for yourself. Let Cote have a moment.
All right, fair enough, but someone died. Let's not call that a gift, and not even the grief eater. Even the grief eater would want that as a gift. I would send that back for refunds if you sent me that as a gift. Let's not call Don Shula's death a gift that Greg Cote has been handed.
I prefaced it by saying he lived a very full life. Okay.
You did. I understand that was the qualifier. Oh, in that case, okay. It's vastly less disrespectful to refer to a death as a gift because it was a full life.
This was a celebration of a full life. Not as much a tragedy as a celebration of a man who lived a very full life and is considered one of the 2 or 3 greatest coaches in NFL history, and on many people's Mount Rushmore of the NFL. Not on mine, but he's on many people's. Larger point here, we digress, is that was a column for Greg Cote to write, and you thunder in and you take the Shula column from him. And we're all excited about it.
All right. So first of all, let's get to your Mount Rushmore that doesn't have Don Shula on it in just a second. But can you help me with something here in terms of exoneration? And Cote, I'd like to hear from you on this because, before I summon a request for forgiveness and exoneration and give you guys an explanation, Cote, what are your thoughts on what it is that Stugotz just had to say, which is me coming in and cherry picking this gift of a death that he alleges that we were given yesterday?
Well, I think there is some truth to the idea that you only write, I guess, 3 or 4 columns a year, and that they tend to be on either momentous occasions, generally related to tearful farewells in some manner, such as Dwayne Wade leaving, Don Shula passing away. But it's understood. I expected you to write yesterday. I don't know whether the Herald called you or whether you volunteered the column, but it was totally expected.
Well, does it matter? Because they did call me, but I don't know whether that hurts you more or less to know that the bosses at the Herald texted me asking me if I wanted to write. And so I decided to write because there aren't very many situations like this in South Florida history where you are telling the story of a legend's legacy. And as it relates to South Florida, Stugotz, to me, the impactful parts of his legacy, there are all sorts of people at ESPN and the NFL Network talking about his coaching and football and victories. But to me, that's secondary in terms of the personal, intimate aspect of his legacy, which is that all over South Florida, he birthed sports fans. The winning, the feel-good, the Miami Dolphins, the Orange Bowl was surrounded by a Cuban exile community that didn't know anything about American football. Yeah. And and that area was so deeply Hispanic, and that Orange Bowl was filled with so many brown people who gathered around the winning. And then soon after, what would happen as he's representing Miami to the nation as a pillar of integrity, what would happen is that Miami would become a legitimate sports town. That doesn't happen without him. And so his legacy, a legend's legacy, is that he birthed the entire sports thing that people care about across generations in South Florida. That we were high life frontons and horse racing. We were a sleepy pre-Scarface South Florida, sunshine and beaches, but you come here to rest and relax. You don't come here for sports action. And that all started with him going undefeated.
It just dawned on me why the Herald called you.
I love some of the comments, though, Stugotz, on the article, because honest to God, you can't even eulogize somebody in the present climate without people looking for reasons to fight you. So I mentioned that he had a perfect season. One of the comments is, Pats went 16-0. Okay, thanks for nothing. I mentioned that he's on the Mount Rushmore of South Florida sports with Riley and Wade and Dan Marino. And somebody writes in, what about Jimmy Johnson? What about Jimmy? And then my personal favorite, the 72 Dolphins didn't get to go to the White House. So there's a picture in the Herald of them with President Obama. And then this comment. leave it to the pinkos at the Failing Herald to place politics aside a great leader. It's unbelievable, man.
If you missed any of our interviews, check them out on demand in the Dan Le Batard Show podcast, brought to you by Capital One. Why settle for average? With Capital One, you can open a savings account with a rate 5 times the national average. Welcome to Banking Reimagined. Capital One, what's in your wallet? Capital One N.A., member FDIC.
So, Stugotz, there are a handful of things happening away from sports that are interesting as it relates to pandemic, as it relates to the economy. You've got Warren Buffett actually saying, Warren Buffett is a really trusted voice when it comes to the economy. He's saying that his $137 billion, quote, isn't all that huge when you think about worst case scenarios, which of course makes me feel terribly bad for Warren Buffett, but not as bad as I feel for the Saudis, who can't get anyone driving and therefore have their oil prices going down. And as you know, I side with the most unpopular of people during these difficult times, like Warren Buffett and the Saudis, for all the difficulties that they're enduring. When Warren Buffett is saying $137 billion, quote, isn't all that huge when you think about worst case. And then on a smaller level, have you seen what happened with a vice president at Amazon? Amazon is one of the few companies that is just rolling in it right now. Bezos is making $24 billion in a couple of weeks. He's hiring 100,000 employees one week, 75,000 another, and a vice president for Amazon said he cost himself $1 million and the best job that he's ever had because he complained about the firing of whistleblowers in the warehouses because so many people are working, because demand is so large that some of the workers are under it in a way that is leaving them, sick and noisily complaining about conditions. And this is not something that anyone obviously can prepare for. So they're hiring more and more employees, and sick leave is something that's becoming a problem. And the firing of whistleblowers is a dangerous thing. And so Amazon is rolling in all of this money, but they've got sick leave questions, and a vice president just told you, Stugotz, at Amazon, put his principles above everything else. That is not easy to do, to take that stand. We'd all agree that that's the right stance to take, and there are a whole lot of Amazon vice presidents not taking it. There are a whole lot of people. That is a really difficult stance to say, I'm going to give up the best job I've ever had. I'm going to give up $1 million because it's simply the right thing to do.
That's a tricky thing to do. You'd like to think that you would do the right thing in that spot, but most people, I'm guessing, would not. But I want to take a second here and readjust who you're feeling badly for, okay? Because it's Mickey Harrison, it's a VP who was a whistleblower at Amazon, it's the Saudis, it's Warren Buffett. I mean, do you want to feel bad for the owner of a mom and pop shop? Do you want to feel bad for the employees at Amazon who are being overworked? Do you want to feel bad for a guy who owns a local pizza parlor? Do you want to feel bad for teachers? I mean, we need to readjust who you're feeling badly for. You're feeling bad for people who are going to be just fine regardless of what happens here with this pandemic, okay? Warren Buffett's like 90 years old. They burning through $136 billion. They'll be fine, okay?
Put it on the poll, Guillermo. Does Stugotz not understand sarcasm at Le Batard Show? Yes or no? You just got on your easy stance horse, not realizing that I was totally joking. There is no circumstance under which you could feel sorry for Saudis who bonesaw journalists. It was clearly a joke. You wrote into your easiest stance possible. Look, Billy's not sure it's a joke.
It's debatable at this point.
Brian's not sure it's a joke. Greg Cote's not sure it's a joke. You guys think that I'm seriously feeling bad for the Saudis because gas prices are down.
Well, the Saudis took such a huge investment in Carnival Cruise Lines. Mickey Arison's
They
Carnival
snuck in
Cruise
through the
Lines,
back door and bought a bunch of stock when no one was looking.
Yeah, they're doing that with Live Nation, too, which, to borrow a quote from Stugotz, someone should look into all of this.
Yeah.
Billy, you raised your finger because everyone is siding with the easy stance of Stugotz here. I was thinking of starting the show on Monday that way. I feel bad for the Saudis just to agitate you because people aren't driving now and gas prices are going down.
What's a joke and what's real? Was Mickey a joke too? Because we did like a week on how bad we felt for Mickey, but I don't know if that was real and what's not. It's just the lines are kind of blurred right now. I don't know what's real and what's not.
That's the entire history of the show, Billy. It's what we all do. Your entire character is an instigator behind a veneer who tries to bother everyone. What's real? What's not real? The only thing that is real around here is the general incompetence of Greg Cote. It is the truest thing we do. It is the most consistent thing we do. So, Greg, you also were wondering whether or not I was being sarcastic or serious on this.
Yeah, your sarcasm, quote unquote, was very thinly veiled. Maybe it should have been a little more apparent to the listener.
Yeah, not going to go ahead. Not going to cater to dumb people. Not going to do it. We do enough of that around here without my help. We do plenty of that. We do it every Tuesday. Every Tuesday as the rodeo clowns bounce off of me. Go ahead, Stugotz.
Don't just limit it to Tuesdays. I mean, I won't be offended.
Yeah, no, I mean, we do it plenty around here where we cater to dumb people, and every once in a while I get a little bit tired of it. But we haven't eulogized, Cody. We haven't eulogized the Mount Rushmore piece, Don Shula of South Florida sports. Who's on that list for you?
It's a simple Mount Rushmore, and I think
It's Dan, Stu, and Greg Cote on ESPN Radio.